The penthouse stood like a fortress above the city, towering, arrogant, cold, and suffocatingly silent. The floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the blazing night skyline, but inside the master bedroom, there was only darkness. Vincent Harlan sat on the edge of the bed, staring into a lifeless void. 32 years old, powerful, wealthy, ruthless. A man who made both the underworld and the boardroom bow their heads. Yet he was helpless before the smallest thing in the world. Sleep. For 5 long years. It had vanished from his life like a traitor who would never return. Vincent glanced at the clock. 12:29 a.m. His whole body tightened. It was time again. He did not need to close his eyes because he already knew what would happen. Tick, tick, tick. 12:30. Vincent's eyes snapped open violently. His breathing turned ragged. His heart pounded wildly. His entire body felt dragged back into an invisible nightmare. He shot to his feet and threw the blanket onto the floor. Damn it. The room remained silent as if mocking him. 5 years ago, he had been a different man. His father was alive. His mother still laughed. The house was full of footsteps. Dinner, conversations, family. Then, after one bloody night, everything was gone. Gunfire, betrayal, blood on the floor. His parents were murdered inside their own mansion. The funeral had not even ended, and the war for power had already begun. Relatives turned against him. Allies stabbed him in the back. Enemies closed in from every side. Vincent defeated them all. He reclaimed the empire, expanded it, ruled it. But while conquering the world, he lost the most important thing: peace, and the ability to be touched by anyone. Whenever any woman accidentally touched him, he lost control. His skin burned, his heartbeat spiraled, rage exploded like a wounded beast. No one dared come near him. No doctor could cure it. No money could save him. Until the day a new maid entered the house. A poor girl. Ordinary. No status. No one knew her name. And in one careless moment, she accidentally touched him. Everyone froze. Vincent froze too, because for the first time in 5 years, he did not get angry. He did not panic. He did not react. He simply stood there, staring at that girl as if he had just seen the first miracle of his life. If you want to know what happens when a mafia boss who cannot be touched by any woman suddenly becomes calm before a poor maid, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel for the next part. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect on the quiet power of kindness, especially when no one else chooses to show it. Share your thoughts in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. Which city and country are you in, and what time is it there right now? It's always amazing to see how stories like this connect people from all over the Farsan world. Is it United States, London, maybe Canada, Jamaica, South Africa, or anywhere we want to know? And tell us what you learned at the end of this video. If moments like this remind you of the beauty of humanity, please like the video and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss more powerful stories that celebrate compassion, courage, and the simple acts of kindness that can change a crisis. Life. The penthouse stood like a fortress above Chicago, tall, cold, and mercilessly silent. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the glittering skyline, the dark ribbon of the Chicago River, and the distant lights of Lake Michigan that shimmered like scattered diamonds on black velvet. Inside the master suite, everything was white marble, dark wood, and expensive silence. Vincent Harlan, known on the streets and in boardrooms as Vinny, sat on the edge of his king-sized bed, staring at nothing. He was 32 years old, fair-skinned, broad-shouldered, with sharp features that once commanded respect and fear in equal measure. Wealthy enough to own half the construction cranes that dotted the city skyline, and powerful enough to move millions through legitimate logistics companies that masked darker dealings, he had everything a man could buy. Yet sleep had abandoned him like an old ally who no longer answered calls. 5 long years had passed since the brutal gang war that tore his world apart. His parents were gone in one night of gunfire and betrayal. The mansion that once echoed with his mother's laughter and his father's booming voice now felt like a tomb. Back then, the house had been noisy with life. His mother would call from the kitchen, "Vinny, if you do not come eat this pot roast right now, I will give it to the dog." His father would laugh deeply. "Let the boy rest, he is running half the outfit, not chasing stray cats." Vinny would roll his eyes and mutter, "Dad, please, I am not chasing anything." "Good, because those streets will eat you alive if you are not careful." Warmth, noise, family. Then came the phone call. One moment, one explosion of violence. Everything ended. The funeral flowers had barely wilted when the wolves closed in. Rivals from within his own circle, uncles and cousins who once broke bread at the same table, turned into enemies overnight. You are too young to hold this empire. Your father promised me shares. You do not understand the game like we do. Vinny had looked at them with ice in his eyes. Try me. And they did. Boardroom ambushes, whispered betrayals, late-night threats in dimly lit warehouses. He fought back with calculated ruthlessness and won every round, expanding his legitimate construction empire while keeping the shadows under control. But while he protected the family business on the outside, something inside him quietly died. Peace. Rest. The ability to close his eyes without seeing blood on the pavement. Later that night, Vinny stood at the window, arms folded across his chest. The city lights below twinkled mockingly. Thousands of people were sleeping peacefully in their modest apartments and suburban homes, wrapped in simple blankets, dreaming ordinary dreams. He muttered to the glass. How do they do it? Just close their eyes and let go. The penthouse felt vast and empty. His bed, dressed in the finest Egyptian cotton sheets, looked soft, inviting, and completely useless. I paid a fortune for you, he said quietly to the mattress. The least you could do is work. The room offered no reply. Vinny had tried everything money could command. One specialist adjusted his glasses in a sleek Michigan Avenue office and said calmly, You need to quiet your mind, Mr. Harlan. Vinny had stared at him. My mind runs construction crews, supply chains, and keeps rivals from putting a bullet in my back. It does not quiet. Another doctor prescribed strong sleeping pills. The result was a few hours of forced unconsciousness, followed by mornings where he woke groggy and disoriented, once greeting his driver with, Good afternoon, Mr. Shareholder. The driver had nearly quit on the spot. Then came the herbal remedies from discreet contacts, dark, bitter liquids that promised spiritual calm. Vinny drank them anyway, only to spend the early hours doubled over in his marble bathroom, with stomach pain that felt like punishment. Wonderful, he had whispered at 2 a.m. Now I cannot sleep. And my body is staging a revolt. Prayer warriors and counselors came next, recommended by trusted associates. They spoke of letting go of guilt and remorse. One even placed a hand on his shoulder during a session, triggering an immediate surge of panic that left Vinny shoving the man away and storming out. Any unexpected touch, especially from a woman, ignited something violent inside him. Rage mixed with a crawling, allergic-like reaction across his skin, heart pounding as if the past betrayals were happening again. He could not bear it. The only person who truly understood the depth of his torment was Eleanor Hayes, his longtime housekeeper, a steady woman in her 60s who had served his family for decades. She knocked gently one morning and entered with a tray of black coffee and fresh apple pie still warm from the oven. Did you sleep at all? She asked softly. Vinny looked up, eyes hollow. Yes. She smiled with gentle hope. In my dreams, he added. The smile faded. Eleanor adjusted the pillow behind him as if he were still a boy. You need peace, Mr. Harlan, not more medicine. Vinny sighed heavily, the weight of 5 years pressing on his chest. If peace was for sale, Eleanor, I would have bought the factory that makes it. She laughed softly, but her eyes carried worry. Some things cannot be bought, sir. He looked away toward the window. Then they should make an exception for men like me. Weeks later, the inner turmoil gnawed deeper. Vinny found himself walking the long corridors of his penthouse at odd hours, replaying memories he wished he could bury. Guilt consumed him. He had been so focused on protecting the empire that he failed to shield his parents. Remorse ate at him like acid, violent emotional conflict raging in his heart between the ruthless boss the streets demanded and the son who still missed Sunday dinners and his mother's voice. He clenched his fists until his knuckles whitened. I should have seen it coming, he whispered to the empty hallway. I should have been there. The silence answered with crushing indifference. One evening, as rain lashed the windows, Vinny received a tense call about rival factions stirring trouble near the South Side warehouses. He drove out himself in a black armored SUV, fair skin tense under the dashboard lights. In a shadowed alley, he confronted a group of men from a competing crew who had been encroaching on his territory. Voices rose in sharp accusations. You think you own these streets forever? Harlan one snarled. Vinny stood tall, voice low and controlled. These are my contracts. Cross the line again and there will be consequences. The confrontation ended with cold stares and veiled threats. No shots fired, but the tension left his pulse racing. He returned to the penthouse even more restless, the gnawing guilt flaring hotter. How many more nights like this? How much longer could he hold everything together while sleep refused him? Meanwhile, far below in the South Side, in one of Chicago's most impoverished neighborhoods, where poverty rates climbed above 50% in places like Englewood and Fuller Park, a young woman named Lily Thompson endured her own private hell. She was in her late 20s, once bright-eyed, but now thin and malnourished from months of scraping by. Her small, run-down apartment had peeling paint, a leaking roof that let in icy wind during Chicago winters, and furniture salvaged from curbsides. She worked 2 low-wage jobs, waitressing at a greasy diner during the day and cleaning offices at night, yet money never stretched far enough. Many nights she went to bed hungry so her young daughter could eat the last slice of bread or a small bowl of cereal. Lily's clothes were threadbare, her frame frail from sleep deprivation and constant worry. Cold, wind-filled nights left her shivering under a thin flannel blanket that offered little warmth. She had known deep humiliation standing in long lines at food pantries, feeling the pitying stares when her daughter asked for seconds at school lunch, or when landlords threatened eviction for late rent. Unreasonable and unjust situations piled on without mercy. One week, her diner boss cut her hours without warning, claiming slow season, even though the place stayed busy. Another time, a cleaning client accused her of stealing supplies that had simply gone missing, docking her pay and leaving her in tears on the bus ride home. She felt powerless, desperate, and utterly alone. At times, her voice grew soft and timid when speaking to anyone in authority, polite to a fault because she could not afford to lose even the smallest opportunity. Yet inside, fierce inner torment raged, confusion about how life had become so cruel, anxiety that tomorrow might bring worse, and a quiet, aching fear that she could not protect her child from the same cycle of poverty. Her 8-year-old daughter, Emma, was a small spark of light in the darkness, talkative, compassionate, and innocent. Emma carried a worn baseball card in her pocket like a treasure, and often drew pictures of happy families with crayons on scrap paper. She would say in her sweet voice, "Mommy, when I grow up, I am going to buy us a big house with a warm blanket for everyone." Those words both warmed and broke Lily's heart. The child had no idea how deep their misery ran, how many nights her mother lay awake, staring at cracks in the ceiling, fighting back tears so Emma would not hear. The gap between their world and Vinnie Harlan's penthouse could not have been starker. While he stared at luxury, he could not enjoy Lily huddled with her daughter under thin covers, wind whistling through window gaps, praying for just one night without worry. Her poverty was absolute and deeply pitiful. Malnourished cheeks, dark circles under exhausted eyes, the constant ache of hunger and cold that made every step feel heavier. She felt horror at the thought of losing their tiny apartment, anxiety that Emma might get sick without medicine, and shock at how quickly life could strip a person bare. Sometimes dizziness and numbness washed over her when the stress became too much, leaving her leaning against walls for balance, pain shooting through her temples. Next morning, after another sleepless night, Vinny stood on his private terrace overlooking the awakening city. The inner conflict tore at him violently. Remorse for the family he lost clashed with the consuming guilt of the choices that kept his empire alive. What kind of man am I, he thought, if I cannot even rest in the safety I built? The question burned. Down in the south side, Lily walked Emma to school, her thin coat barely blocking the morning chill. She held her daughter's hand tightly, voice soft and polite as she greeted neighbors. "Have a good day, sweetheart. Mommy will pick you up later." Inside, her heart ached with disorientation. How had she, once a hopeful young woman with dreams, ended up here powerless and afraid? Later that night, as rain returned, Vinny received another urgent call about rival activity. He headed out again, confronting a tense standoff near a construction site, where men from a rival faction had damaged equipment in a clear warning. Voices sharpened in the shadowed lot. "Stay out of our territory, Harlan." Vinny's response was measured but firm, his fair-skinned face set like stone. "Touch what is mine again, and you will regret it." The encounter ended without bloodshed, but the suspense lingered like smoke. Returning home, the remorse hit harder. He poured a drink but left it untouched, the weight of responsibility crushing him. In her apartment, Lily faced another absurdly unfair blow. A notice slid under the door. Eviction proceedings starting in 30 days due to accumulated late fees she had begged to delay. She sank to the floor, thin frame, trembling, fighting waves of numbness and pain. Tears came silently so Emma, already asleep under the thin flannel, would not wake. The humiliation burned. She felt guarded, fearful. Yet a flicker of curiosity stirred in quiet moments, wondering if somewhere in this cruel city there was still kindness strong enough to change their fate. Her inner world tore between despair and a desperate, fragile hope. The contrast grew sharper with every passing hour. Vinny's wealth surrounded him in layers of marble and silence, yet brought no comfort. Lily's poverty stripped her dignity bare in the most humiliating ways. Hunger pangs during long shifts, cold nights that left her bones aching, the powerless feeling of watching her child go without while she smiled through it all. Both carried deepening inner turmoil, his gnawing guilt and violent emotional conflict over a life built on shadows. Hers a mix of anxiety, shock, confusion, and the fierce protective love of a mother who refused to break in front of her child. As the night deepened, Vinny returned to his window, the city lights blurring slightly from exhaustion. Something unnamed tugged at him, a sense that the isolation could not last forever. Far below, in the windswept streets of the south side, Lily held her daughter closer under the inadequate blanket, whispering soft prayers. Neither knew their paths would soon cross in ways that would challenge every scar, every regret, and every hidden wound. But in that quiet, condensed stillness before dawn, the seeds of compassion, protection, and healing were already stirring in the heart of a powerful man who had forgotten how to sleep, and in the resilient spirit of a destitute mother fighting for her child's future. Next morning, the Chicago sun rose pale and indifferent over the south side, casting long shadows across cracked sidewalks and boarded-up storefronts. Eleanor Hayes stepped out of her modest car in one of the city's most forgotten corners, her heart heavy with the memory of her employer's hollow eyes. She had served the Harlan family for decades, watching the once vibrant household crumble under loss and power. Now, as she walked toward a weathered apartment building with peeling paint and broken steps, she carried a quiet determination. Mr. Harlan needed more than medicine or money. He needed light, something warm and alive to break the suffocating silence that had claimed him for 5 years. Inside the tiny apartment, Lily Thompson moved like a ghost through another exhausting day. She was painfully thin, her cheeks hollow from months of stretching every dollar until it screamed. Malnourished and sleep-deprived, she had spent another cold, wind-filled night huddled with her 8-year-old daughter Emma under a single thin flannel blanket that did little against the drafts whistling through gaps in the windows. The apartment was a picture of absolute poverty. A leaking faucet that never stopped dripping, a small table with 2 mismatched chairs, and a refrigerator that held more air than food. Lily's clothes hung loosely on her frail frame, threadbare from too many washes and not enough replacements. She had endured countless humiliating moments, standing in long lines at the local food pantry, only to receive canned goods that barely lasted the week, or watching her daughter eye the school lunch with quiet hunger, while pretending she was not still hungry herself. Later that morning, after dropping Emma at school with a soft, timid voice, "Have a good day, sweetheart. Mommy loves you," Lily returned to find an unexpected knock at the door. She opened it cautiously, her heart jumping with a mix of fear and guarded curiosity. There stood Eleanor Hayes, dressed neatly, her expression kind but serious. Lily's voice came out polite and hesitant, appropriate for speaking to someone older and clearly from a different world. "Yes, ma'am. Can I help you?" Eleanor introduced herself gently and explained she was looking for reliable help for a large household in the city. The position comes with good pay, room and board, and a chance for stability. Lily listened, her thin hands twisting together. Inside, violent inner conflict tore at her. Part of her felt overwhelming suspicion. Why would someone from a wealthy world offer help to someone like her? Another part surged with desperate hope. She was powerless, drowning in debt and eviction threats. Just last week, an unreasonable landlord had raised the rent without notice, citing building improvements that never happened, leaving her staring at bills she could not pay. The humiliation burned. She had cried silently in the bathroom so Emma would not hear, feeling dizzy and numb, her balance wavering as waves of anxiety crashed over her. Weeks later, after several careful conversations and a background check that revealed nothing but a hard-working single mother trying to survive, Eleanor made the offer official. Lily accepted, her voice soft and trembling with a mix of fear and gratitude. "Thank you, ma'am. I will work hard. I promise." Deep down, an intense curiosity stirred alongside the horror of leaving the only world she knew, even if it was filled with cold nights and empty cupboards. She packed their few belongings into 2 worn bags, one for herself and one for Emma. The child clutched her favorite baseball card tightly, eyes wide with innocent excitement. "Mommy, will there be warm blankets there?" As they drove north toward the glittering downtown skyline, the disparity became painfully visible. Lily stared out the window, her malnourished frame sinking deeper into the seat. The streets changed from run-down neighborhoods with graffiti-covered walls and groups of idle men to sleek high-rises and luxury cars. She felt shock and deep disorientation. How could 2 worlds exist so close yet be so far apart? Dizziness washed over her again, a numb pain in her chest as she realized how pitiful her life must look to outsiders. Emma, however, chattered softly about school and drawings of happy families, her small voice a fragile anchor. Later that afternoon, they arrived at Vinnie Harlan's private estate on the edge of the Gold Coast, a sprawling property hidden behind high gates and security. The mansion was breathtaking in its quiet luxury, polished marble floors, dark wood accents, and large windows overlooking manicured gardens and a view of the lake. Eleanor led them inside, explaining the role with calm efficiency. Lily would handle light housekeeping and personal care for the household. with Emma able to stay in the staff quarters. The wealth surrounded them with increasing intensity, crystal chandeliers that caught the light like captured stars, kitchens stocked with fresh ingredients, and rooms that smelled of clean linen and subtle wealth rather than damp and despair. Vincent Harlan stood in his study when Eleanor brought Lily to meet him. He was tall, fair-skinned, dressed in a tailored shirt that spoke of power without effort. His eyes, sharp and guarded, scanned the newcomer. Lily kept her gaze lowered at first, her voice coming out soft, timid, and exceedingly polite. "Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for this opportunity. I will not disappoint you." Inside her heart a storm raged. She felt guarded and fearful, confused by the sudden shift from poverty's grip to standing in such opulence. Horror at the thought of failing mixed with an unexpected surge of curiosity about this powerful man who carried an invisible weight in his posture. Vinny felt something stir the moment he saw her. From the very first instant, an overwhelming, passionate attachment ignited in his chest, not romantic, but a deep, burning compassion and protective instinct that shocked him with its intensity. This thin, exhausted woman standing before him, clearly shaped by extreme hardship, reminded him of the vulnerability he had failed to protect in his own family. Gnawing remorse flooded him violently. How many people like her suffered in the shadows of his city while he sat in marble silence? The inner conflict tore at him. The ruthless boss who maintained control through calculated strength clashed with a sudden fierce desire to shield this mother and her child from further pain. His heart twisted with consuming guilt over the years of isolation he had chosen, wondering if his power had made him blind to the human cost around him. He spoke calmly, voice low. "You will be safe here, both of you." The words carried more weight than he intended. Lily looked up briefly, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and budding trust. For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of something warm attachment beginning to form toward this stranger who offered shelter without demand. Yet suspicion lingered, making her guarded. She nodded politely. "Thank you, sir. We are grateful." Next morning, while Lily began her duties with careful, tired movements, Vinny received another tense call about rival factions testing boundaries near one of his construction sites. He drove out in his black SUV, the city passing in a blur of steel and glass. In an unexpected street confrontation on a quiet industrial block, several men from a competing crew blocked his path, their voices sharp with accusation. "Your contracts are squeezing us out, Harlan. Back off or things get complicated." Vinny stepped out, fair-skinned face composed but eyes burning with restrained power. "These are legitimate deals. Cross into my territory again and you will find consequences." The standoff crackled with tension, bold words exchanged like loaded weapons, but no violence erupted. He diffused it with cold authority, yet the encounter left his remorse deeper. How long could he balance this life without it touching the fragile new arrivals under his roof? Later that night, as rain pattered against the mansion windows, Lily sat in the modest but warm staff quarters with Emma. The child had eaten a full meal for the first time, in weeks, simple but nourishing food that brought color back to her cheeks. Lily watched her daughter sleep peacefully, under a thick flannel blanket, tears gathering silently. The contrast overwhelmed her. Only days ago they had shivered in cold wind, stomachs empty facing eviction. Now warmth surrounded them, yet the change felt disorienting. She felt numb with gratitude mixed with anxiety, fear that this safety could vanish as quickly as it appeared. Her inner world tore violently between desperate relief and the guarded suspicion of someone who had been hurt too many times by unfair circumstances. Vinny paced his study, the weight of the day pressing harder. Seeing Lily's frail form and hearing Emma's innocent chatter had cracked something inside him. The passionate, burning attachment grew stronger, an intense, protective love for this vulnerable mother and child that clashed violently with his self-imposed isolation. Remorse consumed him as memories of his own parents surfaced. He had built an empire to honor them, yet it had left him unable to sleep or feel human connection. "What right do I have to offer them safety?" he thought bitterly, "when I could not protect my own blood." The emotional conflict raged, tearing at his heart with increasing intensity. Weeks later, small routines began to form. Lily moved through the mansion with quiet diligence, her voice always soft and polite when addressing Eleanor or Vinny. "Yes, sir. I will take care of that right away." At times, she still felt horror at the vastness of the wealth around her rooms, larger than her old apartment food that never ran out. Making her previous poverty feel even more humiliating in retrospect, she experienced moments of deep disorientation, dizziness when the reality hit, numbness in her limbs from the emotional whiplash of sudden security. Yet curiosity bloomed. She watched Vinny from a distance, sensing the heavy burden he carried, and felt an overwhelming surge of trust beginning to take root. This powerful man, wealthy beyond imagination, had opened his doors without judgment. The attachment burned quietly but intensely in her chest. gratitude turning into a fierce protective loyalty toward the one who had rescued them from the edge. One evening, as Vinny returned from another tense confrontation with rivals, this time a bold ambush of words in a parking garage where accusations flew about stolen shipments, he found Lily in the hallway looking lost and overwhelmed. She had just received news through Eleanor that her old landlord had sold her belongings to cover debts, an absurdly unfair final blow to her past life. Tears welled in her eyes as she stood there, thin frame trembling. Vinny stopped, the sight striking him like a physical blow. His heart twisted with violent remorse. In that quiet, condensed moment of stillness, he felt the full weight of his power and the responsibility it now demanded. He spoke gently. "Those things can be replaced. You and your daughter are safe now. That is what matters." Lily looked up, her voice soft and breaking slightly. "Thank you, sir. I do not know how to repay this." The inner tearing in both of them deepened. For Lily, the shift from utter misery to being protected created extreme psychological shock. She felt confused, fearful it was temporary, yet passionately attached to this new reality that offered hope for Emma. For Vinny, the gnawing guilt over his past failures clashed with a fierce growing determination to shield them, his emotional layers peeling back to reveal a man desperate to atone through compassion and responsibility. As night fell once more, the mansion settled into a fragile peace. Vinny stood at his window again, the city lights below reminding him of the worlds he straddled. The inner conflict raged hotter than ever. But for the first time in 5 years, something warmer flickered alongside the insomnia. A sense that rescuing Lily and Emma might be the first step toward healing the wounds he had carried alone for so long. In the staff quarters, Lily held her sleeping daughter close under soft blankets, her heart quietly burning with trust and attachment. The disparity between their old poverty and this new world remained stark. Yet in that stillness, the seeds of compassion and fatherly protection had begun to take root in the heart of a powerful man who had forgotten how to rest. The mansion on the edge of Chicago's Gold Coast woke to a soft golden light, filtering through tall windows. Lily Thompson moved through the grand hallways with careful, hesitant steps, her thin frame still adjusting to the overwhelming change. Only weeks earlier, she had been shivering in a leaking South Side apartment, enduring cold wind that cut through thin walls and left her bones aching. Now she wore a simple uniform provided by Eleanor, yet her cheeks remained hollow from long months of malnutrition, her eyes shadowed by years of sleep deprivation. The disparity struck her anew with every polished surface she dusted, crystal vases, worth more than everything she had once owned, kitchens stocked with fresh fruit and warm bread that never ran out. She felt a deep, humiliating contrast, once powerless and desperate, now surrounded by wealth, that made her past poverty feel even more pitiful and absurdly unfair. Emma, her 8-year-old daughter, explored the staff quarters with wide-eyed wonder, clutching her worn baseball card like a talisman. The child's innocent energy filled the quiet spaces with soft chatter about school friends and drawings of happy families. Lily watched her with a soft, timid smile, her voice gentle when she spoke. "Stay close, sweetheart. This is a big house. We must be careful." Inside, however, violent inner conflict tore at Lily. She felt guarded and fearful, confused by the sudden safety, anxious that one wrong move could send them back to the streets. Horror at her own fragility mixed with heightened curiosity about this new world and the powerful man who had opened its doors. At times, dizziness and numbness washed over her when the reality hit too hard, leaving her leaning against a wall for balance, a quiet pain blooming in her chest. Later that afternoon, the initial chaos began. The household staff, a small team of longtime employees who had grown used to the mansion's heavy silence, gathered in the kitchen with sharp eyes and whispered judgments. They watched Lily move slowly, her malnourished hands trembling slightly as she arranged fresh linens. One murmured, "She looks like she has not eaten properly in months." Another added quietly, "And the child talks too much for this house." Lily overheard fragments, her heart sinking with familiar humiliation. She had faced countless unreasonable situations before: employers who cut hours without warning landlords, who evicted families over tiny late fees, neighbors who judged her poverty as personal failure. Now, even in safety, the sting returned. She felt powerless once more, her inner world numbing with confusion and fear. Yet she kept her voice polite and soft when addressing Eleanor. "I will work harder, ma'am. Please tell me if I am doing anything wrong." Vinny Harlan observed from a distance, standing behind the half-open door of his study. His fair-skinned face remained composed, but inside the emotional layers churned with increasing intensity. The moment he had first seen Lily and Emma, an overwhelming passionate attachment had ignited a deep burning compassion and protective instinct that felt almost fatherly in its ferocity. This destitute mother and her innocent child stirred gnawing remorse in him, reminding him violently of the family he had lost and the vulnerabilities he had failed to shield. How many like them suffer while I sit behind these walls, he thought, the inner conflict tearing at his heart. The ruthless mafia boss who commanded respect through quiet power clashed with a man consumed by guilt, desperate to atone through protection and responsibility. His insomnia felt heavier that day, the sleepless nights blending into a violent emotional storm of remorse and quiet determination. As the afternoon stretched into evening, a small accident shattered the fragile calm. Emma, excited by the spacious hallways, ran ahead while helping her mother carry light supplies. She tripped on a loose rug in one of the side rooms, scraping her knee badly enough to draw blood. The child cried out in surprise rather than severe pain, but Lily rushed to her side, her thin frame dropping to the floor. "Emma, oh sweetheart, let me see." Her voice was soft and trembling, polite even in panic. Blood stained the expensive carpet slightly, a vivid red against the pale luxury. Eleanor quickly brought a first aid kit, but the moment called for more. Vinny appeared almost immediately, his powerful presence filling the room. He knelt beside them without hesitation, his fair-skinned hands steady as he helped clean the small wound. In that condensed moment of stillness, while Lily held her daughter close, something unexpected happened. In the rush to help, Lily's old purse, carried from their previous life, spilled its contents. A folded envelope slid out, yellowed with age. Eleanor picked it up gently, but her eyes widened as she glanced inside. It contained an old letter and a document Lily had kept hidden out of fear and shame. The paper revealed a paternity test result from years earlier, the result of a brief encounter Lily had never spoken about, one she believed would remain buried forever. The name on the document was clear: Vincent Harlan. The room seemed to freeze. Lily's face drained of what little color it had. She felt extreme psychological shock, horror flooding her, anxiety spiking into pure fear, confusion so deep it brought dizziness and numbness that made her nearly lose balance. She clutched Emma tighter, her voice barely a whisper, timid and breaking. "No, please, that was from long ago. I never meant for anyone to know." Her inner world tore violently apart. Once desperately poor and powerless, she now faced the terrifying possibility that the man who had rescued them was connected to her daughter in the most profound way. The mindset of someone who had endured cold nights and humiliating poverty surged with overwhelming attachment and trust, yet mixed with shock that left her disoriented and in pain. How could this be the wealthy, powerful man who offered safety? Was he Emma's father? The thought numbed her violently, tearing at her heart with waves of fear and curious disbelief. Vinny stared at the document, his broad shoulders tensing. The revelation hit him like a silent explosion. Shocking paternity revelation: Emma was his biological daughter. A brief encounter years ago, one he had pushed far into the shadows of his memory amid the chaos of building his empire, had resulted in this innocent child. Remorse consumed him with violent intensity. Gnawing guilt over his parents' death, his isolation, and the life he had led, now clashed with a fierce, fatherly love that burned hotter than anything he had felt in 5 years. "My daughter." He thought the words echoing painfully in his mind. The inner conflict raged: the powerful mafia boss who could not afford weakness, versus the man suddenly faced with the living proof of his past absence. How had he not known? How many cold, wind-filled nights had this child endured while he sat in luxury? The emotional upheaval tore at him, remorse mixing with an overwhelming protective attachment that felt passionate and intense from the very first moment of realization. He wanted to shield her, to atone, to become the father he had never been. Later that night, after the doctor had checked Emma's minor scrape and left the mansion settled into heavy quiet, Vinny sat in his study, the document on his desk like a weight. He replayed the moment, again and again, his heart twisting with consuming remorse. "I failed them before I even knew," he whispered to the empty room. The violent conflict within him escalated, guilt over his ruthless world clashing with a deep, burning desire to protect this vulnerable family now under his roof. His wealth surrounded him with increasing intensity: rare books on shelves, fine whiskey untouched in decanters, views of the glittering Chicago skyline that suddenly felt empty, without meaning. Yet none of it could erase the image of Lily's shocked, malnourished face, or Emma's innocent eyes. Lily, in the staff quarters, held Emma close under soft blankets. The child had fallen asleep, peacefully unaware of the storm. Lily, however, could not rest. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks as she rocked gently, feeling the full, humiliating weight of her past poverty. She had endured so many absurdly unfair events: lost jobs, cold nights without food, the constant fear of eviction, all while carrying this secret alone. Now, sudden protection from a powerful man, who was Emma's father, brought overwhelming trust and attachment. yet also confusion and fear that left her dizzy and numb. Her voice, when she spoke softly to the sleeping child, was timid and full of emotion. "We are safe now, sweetheart. Mommy will figure this out." Inside, her heart tore between gratitude and the terrifying realization of how close they had come to never knowing this truth. Weeks later, the initial chaos had settled into a tense new rhythm, but the revelation hung over the household like a silent storm. Staff whispers grew, though Eleanor kept order with quiet authority. Vinny requested updates on Lily and Emma daily, his powerful presence more frequent in the common areas. He watched Emma with hidden intensity, the father-child bond already forming in quiet moments, offering her a new baseball glove from the city, listening to her chatter about school. The attachment burned in him with passionate force, clashing violently with his remorse. Every sleepless night now carried deeper torment. How could he, a man entangled in street confrontations and empire building, offer this child the stability she deserved? One evening, as Vinny returned from another tense street confrontation, an unexpected encounter in a shadowed warehouse district, where rival voices accused him of tightening control over logistics routes, he found Lily sitting alone in the garden. She looked frail against the backdrop of blooming flowers and soft lighting, her thin frame a stark reminder of the extreme poverty she had escaped. She stood quickly, voice soft and polite. "Good evening, sir," but her eyes held shock, confusion, and a budding, intense trust. Vinny stopped the inner tearing, reaching new heights. In that quiet, condensed stillness under the evening sky, he felt the full weight of responsibility. The mafia boss who commanded loyalty through strength now battled a father's fierce love and gnawing remorse. He spoke gently. "You do not have to be afraid anymore. She, Emma, is safe. You both are." Lily nodded, tears welling as the disparity between her old life of cold, humiliating nights, and this moment of protection hit her with disorienting force. Her heart burned with overwhelming attachment, yet the drama escalated internally, numbing confusion and violent emotional tearing as she grappled with the truth. The mansion, once silent and cold, now carried the faint echo of a child's voice and a mother's quiet prayers. Vinny stood later at his window, the city lights blurring through exhausted eyes. The revelation had cracked his isolation wide open. Remorse and protective love warred inside him with increasing violence. But for the first time, the insomnia felt different, lighter, as if the presence of his daughter, and the resilient woman who had endured so much, might finally bring the healing he had long given up on. In the staff quarters, Lily held Emma close, her malnourished hands, gentler now, whispering soft words of reassurance. The journey from desperate poverty to this shocking new reality had only just begun, tearing at their hearts in ways both painful and profoundly hopeful. Next morning, sunlight poured gently through the tall windows of the Harlan mansion, painting the marble floors in soft golden hues. Lily Thompson moved through her new duties with quiet care, her thin, malnourished frame still carrying the marks of years of hardship. She had known absolute poverty, the kind that left her sleep-deprived and shivering through countless cold, wind-filled nights in a leaking South Side apartment where drafts whistled like accusations. Her cheeks remained hollow, her movements slow from lingering exhaustion. Yet she worked diligently, polishing surfaces that gleamed with a wealth far beyond anything she had ever imagined. The disparity struck her. Repeatedly simple tasks now took place in rooms filled with luxury that made her past humiliations feel even more pitiful and absurdly unfair. Emma, her 8-year-old daughter, followed her mother with bright, innocent energy, chattering softly about the large garden and the warm blankets that felt like clouds compared to the thin flannel she once shared. Lily's voice remained soft and timid when she gently guided the child. "Stay near me, sweetheart. We must not disturb the quiet." Inside, however, her heart tore with increasing intensity. She felt guarded and fearful, confused by the shocking paternity revelation from the previous day. Horror and anxiety mixed with a burning curiosity about the powerful man who was unknowingly until now Emma's father. Dizziness and numbness would wash over her without warning, leaving her leaning against walls for balance, a quiet pain blooming as the reality of sudden protection clashed with her old powerlessness. Later that afternoon, Vinny Harlan returned from the city after another tense confrontation. In a shadowed industrial lot near the river, rival voices had risen sharply against him, accusing him of tightening control over key logistics routes. "You cannot own every contract," Harlan, one man, had snarled in the unexpected street standoff. Vinny had stood tall, his fair-skinned face calm yet commanding, responding with measured authority that diffused the bold exchange without escalation. The suspense lingered in his chest as he drove back, but it was nothing compared to the violent inner conflict waiting for him at home. The revelation that Emma was his biological daughter had cracked open old wounds. Gnawing remorse consumed him with fresh violence. How many cold nights had this child endured while he built an empire in isolation? The powerful mafia boss, wealthy beyond measure, felt a passionate fatherly attachment burning intensely from the moment of discovery. It clashed brutally with his self-imposed solitude, tearing at his heart in waves of guilt and a fierce desire to protect and atone. As evening approached, Vinny requested dinner be brought to his private suite. Eleanor nodded quietly and asked Lily to carry the tray, sensing the need for gentle care in the heavy atmosphere. Lily's hands trembled slightly as she ascended the wide staircase, her voice soft and polite when she knocked. "Your dinner, sir." She entered the dimly lit room with cautious steps, the luxury surrounding her with increasing intensity, soft lighting on dark wood, a large bed dressed in the finest linens, and windows offering a breathtaking view of the Chicago skyline and Lake Michigan. The wealth felt almost oppressive compared to the nights she had spent hungry and cold, powerless against unreasonable landlords, and lost jobs that left her family on the edge of eviction. Vinny sat by the window, his powerful frame silhouetted against the fading light. He gestured for her to place the tray nearby. Lily did so carefully, then hesitated, unsure whether to leave. Emma, who had followed quietly with a small drawing in her hand, peeked in behind her mother. The child's innocent presence filled the heavy silence with unexpected warmth. "Mommy, can I show Mr. Harlan my picture?" Lily's heart raced with a mix of fear and curiosity, her voice timid as she replied, "Only if he does not mind, sweetheart." Vinny looked at the drawing, an innocent sketch of a big safe house with smiling figures and a bright sun. Something deep inside him stirred violently. This was his daughter, unaware of the truth, offering him a simple gift of crayon and hope. Remorse flooded him in a consuming wave, clashing with the ruthless control he maintained over his world. The inner tearing grew sharper. The man who could not sleep for 5 years now felt an overwhelming, burning attachment, a protective, fatherly love that shocked him with its intensity. He wanted to shield this child and her mother from any further pain, yet guilt over his past absence tore at him like never before. "It is a fine drawing," he said quietly, his voice carrying more emotion than he intended. Lily watched the exchange, her thin frame tense. She felt shock and deep disorientation at seeing her daughter interact so freely with the powerful man who was her father. The mindset of someone who had once been desperately poor surged within her. Sudden protection from a wealthy figure created extreme psychological shock. Gratitude burned passionately into trust and attachment, yet fear and confusion left her dizzy and numb, her balance wavering as she stood there. How could life shift so dramatically? From humiliating poverty to this quiet moment of safety, absurdly unfair events from her past flashed in her mind. Nights without food, so Emma could eat cold winds that left her coughing for days. Judgments that stripped her dignity bare. Now protected and seen, her inner world tore violently between overwhelming relief and lingering guarded anxiety. Later that night, as the mansion grew still, Emma grew sleepy while sitting on a nearby chair clutching her baseball card. She began telling a simple, innocent story about school friends and a neighborhood baseball game, her small voice filling the room with light. Lily listened, her heart aching with quiet, condensed stillness. Vinny ate slowly, but his attention was on the child, his daughter. The stories, though simple, carried an unexpected healing quality. For the first time in 5 years, the heavy silence felt less suffocating. He felt the violent conflict ease slightly, remorse still gnawing, but now accompanied by a fierce determination to be the protector Emma deserved. When Emma's words slowed and her head tilted in exhaustion, Lily moved to pick her up. In the gentle motion, she accidentally brushed against Vinny's arm while steadying herself. Normally, any woman's touch triggered rage or panic in him, an allergic-like reaction rooted in past betrayals and violence. Yet this time, with Lily, something different happened. No rage, no panic. Instead, a profound calm washed over him, as if her gentle, kind presence had quieted the storm inside. Lily froze in horror and anxiety, fearing she had crossed a line. Her voice came out soft and apologetic, timid with fear. "I am so sorry, sir. It was an accident." She felt numbness, spread pain in her chest from the shock of the moment, disoriented by the unexpected normalcy. Vinny looked at her, his eyes softening for the briefest instant. The touch had not repelled him, it had grounded him. The passionate attachment he felt toward Lily as the mother of his child burned even stronger, mixed with deep emotional upheaval. This destitute woman, once enduring extreme poverty and cold nights, now brought an inexplicable peace. His inner torment escalated. Gnawing remorse over the years he had lost with Emma clashed violently with gratitude and a fatherly resolve to keep them safe. He spoke gently. "It is all right. Stay a moment longer if you need to." The room settled into a profound, condensed emotional stillness. Emma dozed off on the soft chair wrapped in a thick flannel blanket Eleanor had brought. Lily sat nearby, exhausted yet watchful, her malnourished frame finally relaxing in the warmth. Vinny lay back on his bed, the weight of the day pressing on him. For the first time in 5 long years, as he closed his eyes, sleep came not forced or shallow, but deep, heavy, and peaceful. The insomnia that had haunted him since the loss of his parents lifted in that quiet miracle. No nightmares of betrayal, no restless pacing, just rest brought by the innocent presence of his daughter and the gentle kindness of the woman who had endured so much. Later that night, while Vinny slept soundly for the first time in years, Lily remained in quiet vigil, her heart torn with overwhelming trust and attachment. She felt the violent intensity of emotions that came from being suddenly protected by a powerful man. Once powerless and humiliated by poverty, she now experienced profound shock and curiosity about this new reality. Tears slipped silently as she watched her daughter sleep peacefully. The disparity between their old life, thin blankets against freezing winds, empty cupboards, unreasonable evictions, and this moment of safety evoked deep sympathy for the journey they had traveled. Her inner world numbed with disorientation, yet burned with passionate gratitude toward the man who had unknowingly rescued his own child. Weeks later, the household noticed the subtle shift. Vinny appeared more present, though the staff still whispered about the quiet changes. He requested updates on Emma daily, the father-child bond, deepening in small, tender moments, listening to her stories, offering small American comforts like fresh apple pie or a new baseball cap. Lily continued her work with soft politeness, her voice timid yet steadier. "Thank you for your kindness, sir," she would say when their paths crossed. Inside, her attachment grew intensely mixed with lingering fear and confusion that left occasional waves of dizziness and pain. The once desperate mother felt the mindset of sudden protection tearing at her emotionally, creating a compelling focal point of trust born from hardship. Vinny, in his private moments, wrestled with escalating inner conflict. The sleep miracle had brought relief, yet remorse gnawed deeper. He had failed to know his daughter for 8 years while building wealth and power. The violent emotional tearing between the mafia boss who navigated street confrontations and the father who now longed to atone created profound turmoil. In one quiet evening, after another bold but controlled confrontation with rivals in a downtown parking structure where accusations flew about territory but ended in tense words, he returned to find Lily reading softly to Emma. The sight struck him with fierce protectiveness. His heart burned with fatherly love, passionate and intense, focused on healing the wounds his absence had caused. In the stillness of that first miraculous night, and the weeks that followed, the mansion began to change. What had been cold silence now held the faint promise of healing. Lily's extreme poverty had once stripped her bare with humiliating nights of cold and hunger, but here, under Vinny's protection, she found the beginning of safety. Vinny's wealth, displayed in every elegant detail, now served a higher purpose, shielding the vulnerable family that had unknowingly cracked open his isolation. The inner tearing in both their hearts grew, yet alongside the remorse and fear came a quiet hope that compassion and responsibility could mend what violence and poverty had broken. The sleep miracle was only the start of a deeper journey toward fatherly protection and emotional restoration for a powerful man and the child he had unknowingly rescued. Next morning, soft light filtered through the heavy curtains of the Harlan mansion, casting a gentle glow over the polished marble and dark wood. Lily Thompson moved through her daily tasks with quiet diligence, her thin, malnourished frame still bearing the silent scars of years spent in extreme poverty. She had known the deepest kind of humiliation nights, when cold winds howled through cracked windows, leaving her and Emma huddled under one thin flannel blanket, stomachs empty, bodies aching from sleep deprivation. The memory of standing in long food pantry lines, enduring pitying stares while her daughter asked for seconds, or facing landlords who raised rent without warning and threatened eviction over tiny late fees, remained burned into her. Those absurdly unfair events had stripped her dignity bare, leaving her desperate, powerless, and often dizzy with anxiety and numbness. Yet here in the mansion's increasing luxury rooms that smelled of fresh linen and subtle wealth kitchens overflowing with nourishing food, she felt a confusing mix of relief and guarded fear. Her voice stayed soft and timid when addressing Eleanor or Vinny. "Yes, sir. I will take care of the linens right away." Inside, however, her heart tore with growing intensity. The shocking paternity revelation still left her in waves of shock and deep disorientation. She experienced moments of horror and anxiety, wondering if this safety was real or another cruel twist. At the same time, an overwhelming trust and attachment burned passionately toward the powerful man who had unknowingly rescued his own daughter. The mindset of someone once desperately poor, now suddenly protected by wealth, created extreme psychological shock. Numbing gratitude mixed with fearful curiosity that left her balance wavering and pain blooming quietly in her chest. Vincent Harlan, meanwhile, carried the weight of new routines with a calm exterior that hid violent inner conflict. The sleep miracle from the previous night had been profound, yet it only deepened his gnawing remorse. He was a wealthy, powerful mafia boss whose legitimate construction and logistics empire spanned the city. Yet he had failed to know his own daughter for 8 years. Every time he saw Emma's innocent face, or Lily's frail form, remorse consumed him like fire. The ruthless man who navigated the shadows clashed violently with the father awakening inside him, a passionate, protective attachment that felt intense and burning. He wanted to atone to shield them, yet guilt over his past isolation and the dangerous world he inhabited tore at his heart with increasing ferocity. Later that day, Vinny made a quiet decision that sent ripples through the household. He requested that only Lily handle his personal meals and care from then on. Eleanor raised an eyebrow but complied without question. When the staff gathered in the kitchen, whispers spread quickly. "Why her? She has only just arrived." The words carried jealousy and suspicion, echoing the unreasonable judgments Lily had faced all her life. She overheard fragments while arranging a tray, and felt the old humiliation return powerless once more, even in this place of safety. Her inner world numbed with confusion, anxiety spiking, as she feared losing this fragile security. Yet she kept her voice polite and soft. "I will do my best, ma'am." Weeks later, the special treatment became routine. Lily carried trays to Vinny's suite each evening, her thin hands steadier now from regular meals, though the memory of hunger still haunted her. Emma often tagged along, bringing innocent energy and simple stories about school baseball games with friends or drawings of happy safe houses. In those quiet moments, the father-child bond deepened without words. Vinny listened to Emma's chatter with focused attention, offering small comforts like a new baseball cap or fresh apple pie warm from the oven. The child's presence acted as a gentle healer, her innocent kindness slowly easing the heavy silence that had ruled the mansion for years. One evening, as Lily placed the tray beside Vinny, Emma sat nearby and began telling a story about neighborhood kids helping each other during a storm. Her small voice filled the luxurious room with light. Lily watched, her heart aching in condensed emotional stillness. She felt overwhelming attachment and trust toward Vinny, passionate and intense from the moment she had realized his connection to Emma. This powerful man, surrounded by wealth that grew more evident each day. Fine art on the walls, views of the glittering Chicago skyline had become a source of protection she had never known. Yet the contrast with her past poverty remained stark and humiliating: cold, wind-filled nights versus warm blankets, empty cupboards versus abundant food. The shift left her confused and fearful, sometimes dizzy with disorientation, as if her body and mind could not fully accept the change. Vinny felt the emotional layers peel back further during these sessions. The sleep that now came more easily each night brought relief, but it also amplified his remorse. How many nights did they suffer while I sat here in silence, he thought, the inner tearing growing violently intense. The mafia boss, who commanded respect through quiet power, battled fiercely with the father who longed to make up for lost time. His attachment to Lily as the resilient mother who had endured so much created a compelling focal point: deep compassion, mixed with a burning desire to protect her and Emma from any further pain. He spoke little, but his eyes followed them with quiet intensity, the violent conflict between his dangerous world and this new vulnerability raging inside him. Later that night, after another tense street confrontation, the drama escalated. Vinny had driven to a quiet warehouse district where rivals from a competing faction waited in the shadows. Their voices rose in bold accusations during the unexpected encounter. "Your expansion is pushing us out, Harlan. Share the roots or face consequences." Vinny stood firm, his fair-skinned face composed, responding with controlled authority that diffused the tension without violence. "These are legitimate contracts. Respect the boundaries." The suspense lingered as he returned to the mansion, the weight of his dual life pressing harder. The inner remorse tore at him more fiercely. How could he keep this dangerous world from touching the fragile family now under his roof? In the staff quarters, Lily faced another absurdly unfair blow that reopened old wounds. A letter arrived through a former neighbor informing her that her old belongings left behind had been sold off by the landlord to cover fabricated storage fees. The news struck her like a physical blow. She sank onto the bed, thin frame, trembling, tears falling silently so Emma would not wake. The humiliation was profound, once again powerless, her past misery laid bare in the most unjust way. She felt horror, anxiety, and deep disorientation, numbness spreading through her as waves of pain and dizziness washed over her. How many times had life kicked her when she was already down? The contrast with the mansion's luxury only intensified the tearing in her heart. She had gone from desperate poverty to being protected by a wealthy man. Yet the emotional whiplash left her guarded and fearful, even as trust burned passionately within her. Vinny learned of the letter through Eleanor the next morning. The news ignited fresh, violent conflict inside him. Remorse consumed him as he imagined Lily's suffering. In a quiet moment in his study, he stared at the city skyline. The wealth around him, expensive furnishings, secure gates, views worth millions, feeling suddenly hollow. His attachment to Lily and Emma had grown into something fierce and fatherly, a passionate need to shield them that clashed brutally with his guilt over the years of absence and the dangerous life he led. The inner tearing reached new heights, leaving him restless despite the improving sleep. As weeks turned into a steadier routine, small joys began to emerge. Emma and her best friend Sophie, who visited occasionally from the old neighborhood, played in the garden with simple American pleasures, tossing a baseball or drawing pictures together. Sophie, a vulnerable child from an even more disadvantaged background, watched Vinny with initial distrust, whispering warnings to Emma. "Powerful men like him can hurt people like us." The words created quiet tension, highlighting the emotional layers of children shaped by hardship. Lily observed these moments with soft, timid smiles, her voice polite when thanking Vinny for allowing the visits. "Thank you, sir. It means a lot to her." In the condensed stillness of one evening after Emma had fallen asleep, Lily lingered in Vinny's suite to clear the tray. She spoke softly, her voice carrying the weight of her journey. "I never thought we would have a place like this. It still feels like a dream. Sometimes a frightening one." Vinny looked at her, the passionate attachment surging. He felt the mindset of her past desperation reflected in her eyes, and it tore at him violently. His remorse and protective love clashed in a storm of emotion, deepening the father-child bond with Emma and the compassionate responsibility he felt toward Lily. The mansion, once defined by cold silence, now held the faint echoes of a child's laughter and a mother's quiet resilience. Vinny's wealth continued to display itself with growing intensity: sleek cars in the garage, secure grounds patrolled discreetly. Yet it now served a higher purpose, creating safety for the vulnerable family he had unknowingly rescued. Lily's extreme poverty, with its cold nights and humiliating struggles, made the contrast even sharper, evoking sympathy for the resilient woman who had endured so much. The inner worlds of both adults tore with increasing intensity, his gnawing guilt and violent emotional conflict, hers a mix of overwhelming trust, lingering fear, and passionate attachment. Yet in the growing routine and special treatment, something healing was taking root. The sleep that came more easily to Vinny each night felt like a quiet miracle brought by the innocent presence of his daughter and the gentle strength of Lily. The bonds deepened slowly, compassion and responsibility bridging the vast gap between power and poverty, setting the stage for greater tests and deeper emotional restoration in the days ahead. The Chicago skyline gleamed under a crisp autumn sky as preparations quietly began inside the Harlan mansion. Vinny Harlan stood in his study, his powerful frame silhouetted against floor-to-ceiling windows that offered sweeping views of the city and Lake Michigan. His wealth displayed itself with increasing intensity: tailored suits hanging in an enormous closet, rare watches arranged like artifacts, and a private car collection that spoke of unquestioned power. Yet none of it eased the violent inner conflict tearing at his heart. The growing routine with Lily and Emma had brought deeper sleep and moments of unexpected warmth, but it had also sharpened his gnawing remorse. He was a wealthy mafia boss whose legitimate construction empire built half the city's skyline, yet he had unknowingly left his own daughter and her mother to endure extreme poverty. The passionate fatherly attachment he felt toward them burned with fierce intensity, clashing brutally with the dangerous world he navigated daily. How can I protect them when my own shadow could destroy everything, he thought, the emotional layers ripping him apart with consuming guilt and a deepening sense of responsibility. Later that day, Vinny made a decision that surprised even Eleanor. He arranged for an elegant but simple evening gown to be delivered classic American grace in soft cream tones, suitable for a high society charity gala that evening. When Lily was called to the living room, she stood frozen, her thin, malnourished frame looking even smaller against the opulent surroundings. The gown was beautiful, far beyond anything she had ever touched. Her voice came out soft, timid, and exceedingly polite as she addressed Vinny. "Sir, this is for me." She felt immediate horror and anxiety, her hands trembling as she touched the fine fabric. The contrast with her past poverty hit her like a wave: nights of cold wind, cutting through threadbare coats, humiliating hours in food lines where strangers judged her thin cheeks, and exhausted eyes, absurdly unfair evictions that left her and Emma with almost nothing. Now sudden protection from a powerful man left her confused, fearful and dizzy with disorientation. Numbness spread through her limbs as she wondered if she truly belonged in this world. Vinny watched her with quiet intensity, the overwhelming attachment surging inside him. This resilient woman, once desperate and powerless, now stirred a burning compassion that felt profoundly fatherly. He wanted to shield her and Emma from any further pain, yet the inner tearing escalated violently. Remorse over the years they had suffered alone clashed with his determination to give them a place in his world. "You and Emma will come with me tonight," he said calmly. "It is a charity gala for children's programs. You deserve to be seen." Lily's heart raced with a mix of shock and heightened curiosity. The mindset of someone who had endured sleep-deprived nights and humiliating poverty now faced extreme psychological shock at being suddenly included in high society. She felt guarded and fearful, yet an intense, passionate trust toward Vinny continued to grow, creating a compelling focal point of emotional upheaval. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, her voice soft and breaking slightly. "I will try not to embarrass you." Weeks of routine had already deepened the bonds in small ways, Emma's innocent stories bringing light to Vinny's evenings, Lily's gentle care allowing him rest he had not known in 5 years. But the gala would expose everything publicly. Later that afternoon, as Lily prepared in a quiet dressing room with Eleanor's help, another unreasonable blow from her past arrived via a short message from an old neighbor. Her former landlord had publicly spread rumors in their old Southside community that Lily had abandoned the apartment and owed even more money, shaming her name among people who had once known her struggles. The news reached her through a brief phone call, striking her with fresh humiliation. She sank onto a chair, thin-framed, trembling, tears welling as waves of numbness and pain washed over her. The absurdity of the lie, after all the cold nights and powerless days she had endured, tore violently at her inner world. She felt horror and anxiety spike dizziness, making her grip the edge of the chair for balance. How could life continue to punish her even now when safety seemed within reach? Emma, sensing her mother's distress, hugged her tightly. "Mommy, it is okay. We have warm blankets here." The child's innocent kindness only deepened Lily's emotional storm, overwhelming attachment to this new life mixed with lingering fear that it could all be taken away. That evening, the Grand Chicago Charity Gala unfolded in a glittering downtown hall filled with the city's elite. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above tables laden with fine food, including stations serving deep-dish pizza and auction items featuring baseball memorabilia. Vinny arrived with quiet authority, fair-skinned and commanding in his tailored black suit. Lily walked beside him in the elegant gown, Emma staying close with Sophie, who had been allowed to join for the evening as a special guest. Sophie watched Vinny with cautious eyes, still whispering warnings to Emma. "Be careful. Powerful men can change." Heads turned as they entered. Whispers spread like ripples. "Who is she with Harlan? She does not look like she belongs here." Lily felt the weight of every gaze, her malnourished past making her feel exposed and out of place. She kept her voice soft and polite when introduced to guests, but inside violent inner conflict raged. The disparity between her old life of cold, wind-filled nights and this world of wealth felt humiliatingly stark. She experienced deep disorientation and numbness, her balance wavering as anxiety surged. Yet Vinny stayed protectively near his presence, a quiet anchor. His own heart tore with increasing intensity. Remorse over exposing them to judgment clashed with a fierce fatherly desire to claim them publicly as part of his world. During the evening, Vinny's cold former associate approached a sharp woman from his past circles who embodied the ruthless side of his life. She scanned Lily with dismissive eyes. "Interesting choice of company tonight, Vinny. She looks different." The words carried veiled mockery, echoing the unreasonable judgments Lily had faced all her life. Lily felt a fresh wave of horror and fear, her thin frame tensing. She responded softly, her voice timid yet steady. "Thank you for the evening, ma'am." Inside, the drama escalated, numbing confusion and violent emotional tearing as she grappled with being suddenly thrust into a world that highlighted her past poverty. Vinny's response was calm but firm, his inner torment flaring. The passionate attachment he felt toward Lily and Emma burned hotter, a protective love that made him want to shield them from every cruel glance. The violent conflict within him reached new heights. The powerful mafia boss who maintained control through calculated strength versus the man whose remorse over lost time with his daughter demanded he stand openly for them. He guided Lily and the girls away from the tension, creating a small pocket of quiet, condensed stillness amid the gala noise. Emma and Sophie wandered near a children's charity display, their innocent presence drawing soft smiles from some guests. Emma showed her baseball card proudly, while Sophie remained guarded, her distrust of Vinny creating subtle tension. "He seems nice now," Emma whispered. Sophie shook her head. "Just be careful, okay?" The moment highlighted the deeper emotional layers of children shaped by hardship, adding quiet depth to the scene. Later that night, as the gala continued, Vinny faced another unexpected street confrontation on the way to a private side meeting. In a dimly lit side street near the venue, two men from a rival faction stepped forward, their voices bold and accusatory. "You are showing your new family in public now, Harlan. Careful, the streets talk." The tension crackled with suspense, words exchanged like careful blades. Vinny responded with quiet authority, diffusing the encounter without escalation, but the threat lingered, heightening his inner remorse. How close was his dangerous world to touching the fragile bonds he was building? Back inside, Lily stood beside Vinny during a quiet toast for the children's cause. She felt overwhelmed by the disparity, once enduring humiliating poverty, now standing protected by one of the city's most powerful men. The passionate trust and attachment she felt toward him burned intensely, creating a compelling focal point amid her confusion and fear. She experienced moments of dizziness and pain from the emotional whiplash. Yet in the condensed stillness of that moment, she whispered softly, "Thank you for bringing us, sir. Emma is happy tonight." Vinny looked at her, his heart tearing violently. The fatherly love and remorse clashed in a storm that left him raw. He had exposed them to public scrutiny, yet he could not deny the deepening bonds. His wealth surrounded them with increasing intensity, private security, elegant surroundings, the ability to change their lives overnight, yet it could not erase the past cold nights, or the unjust rumors that still chased Lily. As the evening drew to a close, the group returned to the mansion under the cover of night. Emma and Sophie slept in the car, exhausted but content. Lily sat quietly, her thin frame finally relaxing slightly in the soft leather seat. Vinny watched them, the inner emotional upheaval reaching new depths. The gala had publicly exposed the fragile family he was protecting, intensifying his gnawing guilt and fierce determination to keep them safe. In the quiet ride home, the bonds had grown stronger despite the tension. Lily's overwhelming attachment continued to burn, mixed with lingering guarded fear. Vinny's remorse and protective love tore at him more intensely than ever. The night had tested them, highlighting the vast gap between poverty and power. Yet it had also revealed the healing power of compassion and responsibility. The journey toward deeper father-child connection and emotional restoration had taken another significant public step, one that carried both hope and the weight of greater challenges ahead. Next morning, the Harlan mansion carried a lingering hush from the previous night's gala, the grand rooms still echoing faintly with the memory of crystal chandeliers and whispered judgments. Lily Thompson moved through her duties with slow, careful steps, her thin, malnourished frame wrapped in the simple uniform that now felt both comforting and foreign. The elegant gown from the night before hung carefully in her closet, a stark reminder of the vast disparity between her old life and this new reality. She had once endured the deepest poverty, sleep-deprived nights, shivering under a single thin flannel blanket as cold winds whistled through cracked windows, stomach pains from hunger that never fully left, and humiliating judgments from landlords who evicted families over tiny late fees while spreading lies about unpaid debts. Those absurdly unfair events had left her desperate and powerless, her body frail and her spirit guarded. The gala's public exposure still weighed heavily on her. Whispers from guests and the cold stare of Vinny's former associate replayed in her mind, triggering waves of anxiety and fear. She felt confused and deeply disoriented, dizziness washing over her as she polished a silver tray, forcing her to pause and steady herself against the counter. Numbness spread through her limbs, a quiet pain blooming in her chest. Yet beneath it all, an overwhelming trust and attachment toward Vinny burned with passionate intensity. This powerful man, whose wealth surrounded them with increasing intensity, private security, abundant food, warm rooms that banished every memory of cold nights, had stood protectively beside her and Emma. The mindset of someone once desperately poor, now suddenly loved and protected, created extreme psychological shock, violently tearing at her inner world between gratitude and lingering guarded fear. Later that afternoon, Vinny returned from the city after handling pressing matters. His fair-skinned face showed composed authority, but inside, the emotional layers churned with greater violence. The gala had publicly exposed the fragile family he was shielding, intensifying his gnawing remorse. He was a wealthy mafia boss whose construction empire shaped Chicago's skyline, yet the thought of his daughter Emma and her mother Lily enduring years of humiliation alone tore at him relentlessly. The fatherly attachment he felt burned hotter than ever, a passionate, protective love that clashed brutally with the dangerous shadows of his world. Every sleepless night before Lily's arrival now felt like a personal failure. The inner conflict escalated, leaving him restless despite the improving rest he had found in their presence. As evening approached, stress from the day's events and a single glass of wine left Lily unusually vulnerable. She had carried the dinner tray to Vinny's suite, as requested, her voice soft and timid when she entered. Your meal, sir. Emma had already fallen asleep early in the staff quarters, exhausted from the gala. Lily lingered to clear the tray, her thin frame swaying slightly from fatigue and the emotional weight of the previous night. In a moment of unsteadiness, she reached out to steady herself and accidentally brushed against Vinny's arm. Normally, any woman's touch triggered immediate rage or panic in Vinny, an allergic-like reaction rooted in years of betrayal and violence. But this time with Lily, something miraculous happened. No rage surged, no panic rose. Instead, a profound calm washed over him, as if her gentle, kind presence had quieted the storm he had carried for 5 long years. Lily froze in horror and anxiety, pulling back quickly. Her voice came out breaking and apologetic, timid with fear. "I am so sorry, sir. It was an accident. Please forgive me." She felt extreme psychological shock, dizziness, and numbness overwhelming her loss of balance, forcing her to grip the edge of a chair. Pain bloomed sharply in her chest as confusion and deep disorientation took hold. How could her touch not repel him when everything in her past had taught her that power brought only judgment and rejection? Vinny looked at her, his powerful frame still for a long moment. The touch had grounded him in a way nothing else had. The passionate, fatherly attachment he felt toward Lily as the resilient mother of his child surged with even greater intensity, creating a compelling focal point of emotional upheaval. Remorse consumed him violently. How many cold, wind-filled nights had she endured alone while he sat in luxury? The inner tearing reached new heights. The ruthless boss who commanded respect through strength clashed with the man whose heart now ached with a fierce desire to protect and atone. He spoke gently, his voice low. "It is all right, Lily. Stay. You look tired." Exhausted from the gala and the emotional storm, Lily did not leave. She sat on the edge of a nearby sofa, intending only to rest for a moment. The thick flannel blanket Eleanor had brought earlier lay across it, warm and inviting compared to the thin covers of her past. As the night deepened, her eyes grew heavy. Vinny watched her quietly, the weight of responsibility pressing on him. In the quiet, condensed, emotional stillness of the room, with only the soft glow of a single lamp illuminating the luxury around them, both drifted into sleep. Later that night, Eleanor and the household doctor came upstairs after noticing the lights still on. They knocked gently, then entered when there was no answer. The sight that greeted them stopped them both. On the large bed, Vincent Harlan slept deeply and peacefully for the first time in years. Beside him on the same bed, under the soft flannel blanket, lay Lily and a sleepy Emma who had wandered in earlier seeking her mother. The three rested calmly together, the once untouchable boss finally at peace in their presence. Eleanor covered her mouth, whispering, "Jesus is Lord." The doctor blinked in disbelief. "I have treated him for 5 years. This is what works." The revelation spread quietly through the household the next morning, though kept from open gossip by Eleanor's firm hand. Lily woke first, her thin frame jolting with shock as she realized where she was. Horror flooded her, fear that she had crossed an unforgivable line. She felt deep disorientation and numbness, dizziness, making her nearly lose balance as she tried to slip away quietly. Her voice, when Vinny stirred and spoke, was soft, timid, and filled with anxiety. "Sir, I am so sorry. I did not mean to stay. The wine and the tiredness. Please, I will go." Vinny sat up slowly, his eyes calm, yet carrying profound emotion. The touch healing from the night before and the peaceful sleep had shifted something fundamental inside him. The overwhelming fatherly attachment he felt toward Lily and Emma burned with passionate intensity, clashing violently with his gnawing remorse over the years of separation. He spoke gently. "You do not need to apologize. For the first time in 5 years, I slept without fighting ghosts. Your presence, both of you, brought that peace." Lily listened, tears gathering in her eyes. The extreme psychological shock of being suddenly protected and accepted by such a powerful man tore at her inner world. Once desperate and humiliated by poverty, cold nights, empty cupboards, powerless against unjust rumors, she now felt an intense burning trust and attachment. The contrast left her numb with confusion and fear, yet her heart swelled with gratitude that bordered on overwhelming. In that quiet moment of condensed stillness, she whispered softly, "Thank you, sir. I never imagined anyone would see us, truly see us." Weeks later, the bed-sharing revelation lingered like a gentle but profound shift in the mansion. Vinny requested Lily continue handling his care, and the special treatment deepened the bonds further. Emma's innocent stories and drawings continued to bring light, while Sophie's occasional visits added layers of cautious tension, the child still whispering warnings born from her own hardships. "He seems kind but powerful. Men can change," she would say quietly to Emma, creating small moments of emotional complexity that highlighted the deeper scars of disadvantaged childhoods. One evening after another, bold street confrontation in a shadowed downtown alley, where rival voices accused Vinny of expanding too aggressively into certain territories. Their words sharp and threatening, Vinny returned with heavy remorse. The suspense of the encounter had left him tense, yet walking into the quiet suite where Lily waited with a simple meal brought unexpected calm. The inner tearing escalated violently, the mafia boss responsible for maintaining control through power, versus the father whose heart now ached with responsibility for the vulnerable family he had rescued. His wealth surrounded them with growing intensity, secure walls, warm rooms, abundance that banished every memory of hunger, yet it could not erase the past humiliations Lily had suffered. In another condensed moment of stillness later that night, Lily sat beside the bed as Vinny rested. She spoke softly, her voice timid and polite, carrying the weight of her journey. "Sometimes I still wake up expecting the cold wind and empty shelves. Being here, it feels like a dream I'm afraid to believe." Vinny looked at her, the passionate, protective love surging. The violent inner conflict between remorse and atonement tore at him more fiercely, but the healing touch from Lily and the innocent presence of his daughter continued to mend what years of isolation had broken. The emotional night and bed-sharing revelation had marked a turning point. Lily's overwhelming trust and attachment grew stronger, passionate, and burning, even as fear and confusion occasionally brought dizziness and pain. Vinny's remorse and fatherly determination deepened the inner emotional upheaval, creating a compelling focal point of compassion and responsibility. The vast gap between Lily's past extreme poverty and the mansion's luxury remained stark, evoking sympathy for the resilient woman who had endured so much. Yet in the quiet routines and healing presence, the father-child bond with Emma and the protective care for Lily continued to grow, offering hope that compassion could truly heal what power and wealth alone could not. The mansion, once defined by cold silence, now held the promise of deeper restoration. The journey ahead would test these bonds further, but for now, in the aftermath of the emotional night, a fragile peace had begun to settle, one built on trust, protection, and the quiet miracle of human connection. Next morning, pale Chicago light filtered through the heavy curtains of the Harlan mansion, illuminating the quiet luxury that had become both sanctuary and source of inner turmoil. Lily Thompson moved through the hallway with measured steps, her thin, malnourished frame still carrying the invisible weight of years spent in absolute poverty. She had known the cruelest kind of humiliation, sleep-deprived nights, when cold winds sliced through cracked windows, leaving her and Emma huddled under one thin flannel blanket, stomachs aching from hunger that never fully eased and endless unreasonable injustices. Landlords who evicted them over fabricated late fees, employers who cut hours without notice, while spreading rumors that left her name tarnished in their old neighborhood. Those absurdly unfair events had stripped her bare, leaving her desperate, powerless, and often dizzy with anxiety and numbness. The emotional night and bed-sharing revelation from weeks earlier lingered in every quiet glance and softened routine. Lily felt an overwhelming trust and attachment toward Vinny that burned with passionate intensity from the very first moment of safety he had offered. This powerful man whose wealth surrounded them with increasing intensity, secure gates, abundant nourishing meals, rooms warmed against every memory of freezing nights, had become a quiet anchor. Yet she remained guarded and fearful, confused by the rapid shift from utter misery to protection. At times, horror and anxiety surged, bringing deep disorientation, numbness in her limbs, loss of balance, and sharp pain in her chest, as she grappled with the mindset of someone once desperately poor, now suddenly loved and protected. Vinny Harlan sat in his study, his fair-skinned face composed, but inside the violent inner conflict raged hotter than ever. The peaceful sleep he now found each night, thanks to Lily's gentle presence, and Emma's innocent stories, had brought relief, yet it amplified his gnawing remorse. He was a wealthy, powerful mafia boss whose legitimate construction and logistics empire shaped the city. Yet he had unknowingly left his own daughter and her mother to endure cold, humiliating nights alone. The fatherly attachment he felt toward them burned with fierce passion, clashing brutally with the dangerous world he still navigated. Remorse consumed him violently. How could he offer them safety, when his own shadows threatened to swallow everything? Later that day, the drama escalated without warning. Vinny received an urgent call and left for what he believed would be a routine meeting. In a shadowed warehouse district near the river, an unexpected street confrontation unfolded. Several men from a rival faction stepped from the darkness, their voices bold and accusatory. "Your expansion is choking us, Harlan. Back off or the consequences will reach closer to home than you think." The tension crackled with suspense as veiled threats hung in the air. Vinny responded with calm authority, his powerful presence diffusing the immediate danger, but the encounter left a chill of warning. The rivals were growing bolder, and the mention of closer to home struck directly at the fragile family he had begun to protect. He returned to the mansion tense and heavy with remorse. In the quiet of his suite, he found Lily waiting with a simple evening meal. Emma had joined her, clutching a small drawing of a safe big house with warm blankets for everyone. The child's innocent kindness acted as a healing balm, her bright eyes and soft chatter easing the weight on Vinny's shoulders for a moment. Lily spoke in her soft, timid voice, polite as always. "Emma wanted to show you her picture, sir. She worked on it all afternoon." In that condensed emotional stillness, Vinny felt the inner tearing reach new depths. He looked at Lily, and then at Emma, his daughter, and the words rose unbidden. "Lily, there is something I need to tell you. For 5 years I could not sleep. The loss of my parents, the betrayals, the weight of this life. It broke something inside me. But since you and Emma came, the nightmares have quieted. Your kindness, her innocent stories, they have healed what medicine and power never could." Lily listened, her thin frame trembling slightly. Extreme psychological shock washed over her, horror mixed with heightened curiosity and deep disorientation. She felt dizzy and numb, nearly losing balance as she stood there. The mindset of someone who had endured the most pitiful poverty now faced the overwhelming reality of being protected and valued by a wealthy, powerful man. Tears gathered in her eyes as passionate trust and attachment burned even stronger. "Sir, I never thought anyone would see our pain and still choose to help. We were so alone for so long." Before Vinny could respond further, the crisis erupted. A sudden alert from security shattered the quiet. Rivals had launched a bold ambush near the mansion's outer perimeter, an attempt to send a direct message. Vinny moved quickly, but in the chaos of the confrontation on the grounds, a tense standoff unfolded. Voices rose sharply in the evening shadows. "You think you can hide your new family behind these walls, Harlan?" The rivals pressed closer, words turning into bold threats that carried real danger. In the heart of the life-threatening moment, Emma and Sophie, visiting again that evening, acted with innocent courage that no one expected. The 2 8-year-old girls, drawn by the raised voices, slipped toward the edge of the scene. Emma clutched her baseball card tightly like a talisman and called out in her small, clear voice, "Please stop. My daddy is a good man. He gives us warm blankets and keeps us safe." Sophie, still carrying distrust from her own disadvantaged life, hesitated for a moment before stepping forward beside her friend. "He helped my friend when no one else would. Please don't hurt them." Their innocent pleas and the children's healing role created a momentary distraction and humanized the standoff. The rivals paused, caught off guard by the sight of 2 vulnerable children standing bravely. Lily rushed forward, her voice soft yet urgent as she gently pulled the girls back, her malnourished frame shaking with fear and anxiety. In that chaotic instant, she tended to a minor injury Vinny sustained during the confrontation, her gentle touch once again bringing unexpected calm instead of triggering his usual reaction. The rivals ultimately withdrew without further escalation, the suspense resolving in tense words rather than violence, but the crisis left everyone shaken. Vinny stood in the aftermath, his heart tearing violently apart. The children's kindness, Emma's pure faith, and Sophie's reluctant support had helped de-escalate the danger and expose the rivals' ruthlessness. Remorse flooded him in consuming waves. How close had he come to failing them again? The passionate, fatherly love he felt for Emma and his protective attachment to Lily surged with overwhelming intensity, clashing brutally with his guilt over the dangerous life that had nearly touched them. Later that night, in the quiet of the suite under soft lighting, the family gathered in a moment of condensed emotional stillness. Emma and Sophie sat close, the girl's innocent courage still echoing. Sophie looked at Vinny with new eyes, her distrust beginning to soften after witnessing his protection and the way he had listened to their pleas. Lily sat nearby, her thin frame finally relaxing slightly under a warm flannel blanket. She spoke softly, her voice timid and filled with emotion. "You protected us tonight, sir. Even when it was dangerous. You chose us." Vinny looked at them, the inner conflict reaching its most intense peak yet. The wealthy, powerful man whose empire commanded respect now felt the full weight of responsibility. His remorse over the years of separation and the risks his world brought clashed violently with a fierce determination to choose family over shadows. He confessed more deeply, his voice low and moving. "I have carried guilt for so long for the family I lost, for the years I did not know about Emma. But your kindness, Lily and Emma's light, they are healing me. I want to be the father she deserves and the protector you both need. No more hiding in silence." Lily felt extreme psychological shock once again, numbing confusion and violent emotional tearing as gratitude and fear collided. Once desperate and humiliated by cold nights and powerless days, she now experienced an overwhelming surge of trust and attachment that burned passionately. Tears slipped down her cheeks as she whispered, "We were so alone, so cold for so many nights. Thank you for seeing us." The children's healing role had been profound. Emma's innocent words and Sophie's growing trust had not only helped in the crisis, but had also forced Vinny to confront the human cost of his life. In the quiet aftermath, the father-child bond deepened further as Vinny held Emma close for a long moment, the small girl resting her head against him without fear. Weeks later, the life-threatening crisis had left lasting marks, but also stronger bonds. Vinny's wealth continued to provide increasing layers of safety, enhanced security, nourishing meals that brought color back to Lily's cheeks, and warm spaces that banished every memory of freezing winds. Yet the inner worlds of the adults tore with escalating intensity. Vinny wrestled with remorse and the violent conflict between his powerful position and the fatherly love that demanded change. Lily navigated waves of passionate attachment, mixed with lingering anxiety and disorientation, her past poverty making every act of protection feel both miraculous and frightening. In one quiet evening of condensed stillness, as Emma and Sophie played nearby with baseball cards and drawings, Vinny and Lily shared a moment of deep understanding. The confession and crisis had laid bare their hearts. The children's innocent kindness had served as a bridge, healing emotional wounds and highlighting the power of compassion over violence. The mansion, once cold and silent, now held the promise of true restoration. The journey from Lily's extreme poverty to this protected life continued to evoke sympathy and quiet tears for the resilient mother who had endured so much. Vinny's remorse and protective love, intensified by the night's events, pointed toward even greater decisions ahead. The father-child bond with Emma and the compassionate responsibility he felt toward Lily had grown deeper, setting the stage for the final choices that would define their future together. Gentle Chicago sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the Harlan mansion, but the air felt heavier than before. Lily Thompson moved through the quiet hallways with slow, careful steps, her thin, malnourished frame still showing the silent toll of years in absolute poverty. She had known the most pitiful kind of existence, sleep-deprived nights shivering under one thin flannel blanket, as cold winds howled through cracked windows, stomach pains from hunger that never fully left, and countless humiliating injustices, landlords who evicted them over fabricated late fees, employers who cut her hours without warning while spreading lies that left her name stained in the old neighborhood. Those absurdly unfair events had left her desperate and powerless, her body frail and her spirit often guarded against further pain. The life-threatening crisis and confession from weeks earlier had deepened the bonds. Yet they had also left Lily in a state of heightened emotional fragility. She felt an overwhelming trust and attachment toward Vinny that burned with passionate intensity. This powerful man, whose wealth displayed itself with increasing intensity, secure grounds, warm rooms filled with nourishing food, and layers of protection that banished every memory of cold nights, had stood between danger and her family. Yet she remained confused and fearful, experiencing moments of deep disorientation, dizziness, and numbness that made her pause and steady herself against walls. The mindset of someone once desperately poor, now suddenly protected by a wealthy figure, continued to create extreme psychological shock, violently tearing at her inner world between gratitude and lingering anxiety. Vinny Harlan stood on the terrace overlooking the lake, his fair-skinned face set in quiet resolve, but inside the violent inner conflict raged with greater force. The peaceful sleep he now found each night, thanks to Lily's gentle presence and Emma's innocent stories, had brought relief, but it had also sharpened his gnawing remorse. As a wealthy mafia boss whose legitimate empire shaped the city, he carried the heavy knowledge that his world had nearly touched the vulnerable family he was learning to love as his own. The fatherly attachment he felt toward Emma and his compassionate protectiveness toward Lily burned fiercely, clashing brutally with the guilt over years of unknowing absence and the dangers that still lingered. Later that afternoon, the new bold twist struck without mercy. A former associate, someone Vinny had trusted in the past, arrived unannounced with documents and recorded messages. He claimed to have proof that Vinny had knowingly abandoned Lily and Emma years ago, that he had chosen power and the streets over any responsibility. The evidence was manipulated and false, carefully crafted by the rival faction to sow division. But it looked devastatingly real. Old letters twisted out of context, timestamps altered, and whispers from paid sources. The associate left the materials with a cold smile, warning that the truth would soon spread if Vinny did not yield certain territories. Vinny read the documents in stunned silence. Remorse hit him like a physical blow, consuming him with violent intensity. Even though he knew deep down the claims were lies, the mere suggestion that he had willfully abandoned his own child tore at his heart with savage force. The inner tearing escalated to unbearable levels. The powerful man who commanded loyalty through strength now felt crushed by guilt, questioning every choice that had led to this moment. How could he face Emma if even a shadow of doubt existed? His passionate, fatherly love clashed brutally with self-doubt and consuming remorse, leaving him raw and shaken. When the news reached Lily later that evening through a quiet conversation with Eleanor, the effect was devastating. She stood frozen in the staff quarters, the papers trembling in her thin hands. Horror flooded her, followed by sharp anxiety and fear that left her dizzy and numb, nearly losing balance as she leaned against the wall for support. Pain bloomed in her chest as deep disorientation took hold. He knew she whispered, her voice soft, timid, and breaking. The mindset of someone who had endured the most humiliating poverty, cold, wind-filled nights, empty cupboards, powerless against unjust rumors, now faced the terrifying possibility that the man who had rescued them had done so out of obligation rather than genuine care. The overwhelming trust and attachment she had felt burned painfully, turning into confusion and violent emotional tearing. How could the safety she had come to believe in be built on such a cruel foundation? Tears slipped silently down her cheeks as she tried to process the shock. Emma, sensing something was wrong, found her mother crying quietly. The child hugged her tightly, her innocent voice soft. "Mommy, why are you sad? Mr. Harlan is nice. He gives us warm blankets." The words only deepened Lily's torment, evoking sympathy for the resilient mother who had already endured so much. Later that night, the betrayal's impact reached its peak. Devastated and overwhelmed, Emma overheard fragments of the adults' hushed conversation. The little girl, still unaware of the full truth of her parentage, but feeling the tension, ran away in tears. She slipped out of the mansion grounds and disappeared into the nearby streets, heading instinctively toward a familiar baseball field in a park not far from the estate, a place she associated with simple joy and safety from her old neighborhood days. When Vinny learned what had happened, his world shattered. Remorse consumed him in violent waves. He rushed out into the night, driving through the city streets with a heavy heart, the luxurious car feeling hollow compared to the fear gripping him. The fatherly love he felt for Emma burned with passionate intensity, clashing brutally with the guilt that now threatened to break the fragile bond they had built. "I cannot lose her again," he thought, the inner conflict tearing at him more fiercely than any street confrontation ever had. After hours of searching, Vinny found Emma sitting alone on a bench near the baseball field under the dim glow of streetlights. The child was cold and frightened, her small frame huddled against the night chill, a heartbreaking echo of the many cold, wind-filled nights she and her mother had once endured. Vinny approached slowly, his powerful presence softened by raw emotion. He knelt in front of her, his voice low and filled with genuine pain. "Emma, I never knew about you before. I never abandoned you. Someone is trying to hurt us by lying. You are my daughter and I love you. I will never leave you again." Emma looked up at him with tear-filled eyes, her innocent trust wavering for the first time. In that quiet, condensed emotional stillness under the night sky, the near break of the father-child bond hung in the balance. Vinny held her gently for the first time without hesitation, his heart tearing violently between remorse for the past and fierce determination to prove his love. The child eventually leaned into him, whispering softly, "Promise you won't go away." The moment was raw and moving, evoking deep sympathy as the powerful man humbled himself before his vulnerable daughter. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Lily waited in agony. Another absurdly unfair blow arrived through a message the rival faction had begun spreading the manipulated story in certain circles, threatening to tarnish Vinny's name and by extension the safety of the family. She felt horror and anxiety spike numbness, spreading as waves of pain and disorientation washed over her. Once powerless in poverty, she now faced the terrifying possibility of losing the protection that had given them hope. Her passionate attachment to Vinny and the life he offered clashed violently with fear, leaving her inner world numb and torn. Weeks later, the betrayal had left deep scars, but also forced honest conversations. Vinny worked tirelessly to disprove the false evidence, confronting the source of the manipulation in a tense but controlled street encounter in a quiet industrial lot. Rival voices rose sharply in the unexpected standoff. "You cannot hide behind lies forever, Harlan." Vinny responded with calm authority, diffusing the tension without violence, but the suspense underscored how close the danger had come to breaking his family. In the quiet aftermath, Lily and Vinny shared a moment of condensed emotional stillness in the garden. She spoke softly, her voice timid yet filled with the weight of her journey. "I was so afraid the safety was built on something false. We have known too much cold and hunger to trust easily." Vinny looked at her, the inner tearing still intense, but now accompanied by renewed resolve. His remorse and protective love burned fiercely, the fatherly bond with Emma growing even stronger after the near break. The bold twist of betrayal had tested them to the limit, nearly shattering the father-child connection. Yet in the raw pain and honest reconciliation, the bonds deepened. Lily's overwhelming trust continued to grow despite the confusion and fear her past poverty, making every act of protection feel both miraculous and fragile. Vinny's wealth provided increasing layers of safety, but it was his willingness to confront his own guilt and fight for the family that began to heal the wounds. The mansion, once defined by cold silence, now carried the echoes of a child's tears and a father's quiet vows. The near break had been painful, but it had also revealed the true strength of compassion and responsibility. The journey toward full acceptance and emotional restoration continued, with greater challenges and deeper healing still ahead. Next morning, the Chicago sun rose over the Harlan mansion with a quiet intensity that did nothing to ease the heavy atmosphere left by the betrayal. Lily Thompson moved through the sunlit hallways like a shadow of her former self, her thin, malnourished frame still fragile from years of extreme poverty. She had endured the most humiliating existence. Endless sleep-deprived nights shivering under one thin flannel blanket as cold winds cut through cracked windows, stomach aches from hunger that never fully subsided, and absurdly unfair blows. Landlords who sold her belongings to cover invented debts, neighbors who whispered lies, and employers who cut her hours while judging her for the very poverty they helped create. Those experiences had left her desperate and powerless, her body frail and her spirit often guarded against further heartbreak. The near break of the father-child bond from weeks earlier still lingered, deepening Lily's inner turmoil. She felt an overwhelming trust and attachment toward Vinny that burned with passionate intensity. Yet the manipulated accusations had planted seeds of doubt that left her confused, fearful, and deeply disoriented. Waves of dizziness and numbness washed over her without warning, forcing her to pause and steady herself against walls, pain blooming sharply in her chest. The mindset of someone once desperately poor, now suddenly protected by a wealthy, powerful man, created extreme psychological shock, violently tearing at her heart between gratitude and lingering anxiety. Vinny Harlan stood in his study, his fair-skinned face etched with exhaustion, but the violent inner conflict inside him had reached a fever pitch. The wealthy mafia boss, whose legitimate construction and logistics empire dominated the city, carried a burden heavier than any empire. The fatherly love he felt for Emma and his compassionate protectiveness toward Lily burned fiercely, clashing brutally with gnawing remorse over the years of unknowing absence and the dangers his world had brought to their door. The betrayal had nearly shattered the fragile bond with his daughter, and the remorse consumed him in savage waves, leaving him torn between the ruthless control he once maintained and the man who now longed only to atone. Later that day, the climactic new twist erupted in the most explosive way. Vinny received an urgent summons to an abandoned warehouse on the city's outskirts. Sensing danger, he went alone, but the rivals had planned their final move carefully. In a bold, unexpected street confrontation inside the dimly lit warehouse, the rival leader stepped forward with cold triumph. "You thought the lies about abandoning your child would break you, Harlan. That was only the beginning. I orchestrated everything. The gang war that killed your parents, the betrayals that isolated you, even the separation from the woman and child. I kept you broken and controllable so I could take your empire piece by piece." The revelation hit Vinny like a thunderclap. The explosive truth shattered years of guilt and self-blame. The rival had manipulated events for years to keep Vinny isolated, feeding his remorse and preventing him from finding peace or family. As the rival prepared to eliminate him and seize control, tension crackled in the air with life-threatening suspense. Voices rose sharply in the shadowed space, accusations and threats filling the cold warehouse. At that critical moment, Emma and Sophie, who had secretly followed Vinny's car out of innocent worry after sensing the adult's distress, slipped into the warehouse unnoticed. The two 8-year-old girls, hearts pounding with fear but driven by loyalty, stepped forward with pure courage. Emma clutched her worn baseball card tightly and called out in her small, clear voice, "Stop, he is my daddy, and he loves us. He gives us warm blankets and keeps us safe from the cold." Sophie, whose distrust had slowly turned to cautious trust, after witnessing Vinny's protection, stood beside her friend and added, "He helped us when no one else would. Please don't hurt him." Their innocent intervention created a powerful emotional turning point. The rival leader faltered, caught off guard by the sight of two vulnerable children standing bravely in the face of danger. In that chaotic instant, Lily, who had followed in another car after realizing the girls were missing, rushed in. She tended to Vinny, who had sustained a minor injury during the confrontation, her gentle touch once again bringing calm instead of triggering his old reactions. Her voice was soft and trembling as she spoke to the rival. "He has suffered enough. We all have. Please let this end." The children's healing role proved decisive. Their pure kindness and Emma's heartfelt plea exposed the rival's cruelty in the most human way, forcing him to hesitate long enough for Vinny's security team to arrive and resolve the standoff without further violence. The rival was taken into custody, his manipulation and betrayal fully revealed. The explosive truth had not only saved Vinny physically but had also shattered the chains of guilt that had bound him for years. Later that night, back in the safety of the mansion, the family gathered in Vinny's suite under soft lighting. The air was thick with condensed emotional stillness. Emma and Sophie sat close together, the girl's courage having forged a deeper bond with Vinny. Sophie looked at him with new eyes, her earlier distrust replaced by quiet trust, after seeing his willingness to fight for them. Lily sat nearby, her thin frame finally beginning to relax, under a warm flannel blanket. She felt overwhelming relief mixed with the lingering shock of the night's events, her passionate attachment to Vinny burning even stronger, despite the fear and disorientation that still caused occasional dizziness and pain. Vinny looked at them, his heart tearing with the most intense remorse and redemption he had ever known. The explosive revelation had freed him from years of self-blame, but it had also forced him to confront how close he had come to losing everything that truly mattered. The fatherly love he felt for Emma and his protective compassion for Lily surged with passionate intensity, clashing violently with the guilt he now understood was manipulated. In a voice heavy with emotion, he spoke to Lily. "Everything the rival said about me abandoning you was a lie he created to keep me broken. I never knew about Emma until you arrived, but I carry the regret of the years we lost. Tonight I choose you both fully. No more shadows. No more empire at the cost of family." Lily listened, tears streaming down her face. The extreme psychological shock of the night's events left her numb and disoriented, yet the overwhelming trust and attachment she felt toward Vinny created a compelling focal point of deep healing. Once desperate and humiliated by cold nights and powerless days, she now experienced the profound reality of being truly seen and protected. Her voice came out soft and timid, filled with moving emotion. "We were so cold and alone for so long. Thank you for fighting for us." In that quiet, condensed moment, Vinny pulled Emma close, the father-child bond reaching its most powerful expression. The little girl who had brought healing through her innocent stories and courage now rested safely in his arms. Sophie watched with softened eyes, her own emotional turning point complete, as she witnessed true kindness from a man she once feared. Weeks later, the explosive revelation and ultimate redemption had transformed the household. Vinny began stepping back from the more dangerous aspects of his world, focusing instead on his legitimate businesses and the family that had healed him. His wealth continued to provide increasing layers of safety and comfort, warm rooms, nourishing meals that brought health back to Lily's frail body, and secure spaces that erased every memory of freezing winds and hunger. The inner worlds of Lily and Vinny still carried deep emotion. Lily navigated waves of passionate attachment mixed with the lingering effects of her past poverty, experiencing occasional anxiety and disorientation that reminded her how far they had come. Vinny's remorse had not vanished, but it had transformed into a fierce determination to be the father and protector they deserved. The violent inner conflict had eased into a profound sense of purpose. In one quiet evening of condensed emotional stillness, as Emma and Sophie played with baseball cards and drawings under warm lights, Vinny and Lily shared a moment of deep understanding. The climactic twist had tested them to the breaking point, but it had also brought ultimate redemption. The children's innocent kindness had not only saved lives, but had revealed the true strength of compassion over power. The mansion, once cold and silent, now echoed with the soft sounds of healing and hope. The explosive revelation had cleared the path for full acceptance, setting the stage for the final chapter, where Vinny would completely embrace his role as father and protector. The journey from Lily's extreme poverty to this redeemed life continued to evoke sympathy and quiet tears for the resilient mother and the powerful man who had found his humanity through the innocent light of a child. Next morning, soft golden light bathed the Harlan mansion, bringing a sense of renewal after the storms that had tested them all. Lily Thompson moved through the familiar hallways with gentler steps, her once thin and malnourished frame now slowly gaining strength from consistent nourishment and warmth. She still carried deep memories of absolute poverty, the kind that left her deprived of food and sleep for so many nights, enduring cold wind that cut through thin walls and left her body aching with exhaustion. Those humiliating years had been filled with unreasonable and unjust situations. Landlords who evicted families without mercy over tiny late fees, employers who cut hours while spreading cruel rumors, and the constant powerless feeling of watching her daughter go without while she smiled through the wargay. Pain. The disparity between that old life and the increasing luxury around her polished marble. Abundant meals, secure walls that kept every cold night at bay remained vivid, making her heart swell with both gratitude and lingering emotional echoes. Vinnie Harlan stood on the terrace overlooking Lake Michigan, his powerful frame relaxed, yet carrying the weight of profound inner reflection. As a wealthy and successful man whose legitimate businesses shaped much of the city, he had once been defined by isolation and control. Now the fatherly love he felt for Emma and his compassionate protectiveness toward Lily had transformed him. The passionate attachment burned steadily, no longer clashing as violently with remorse, but still stirring deep emotional layers. He reflected on how wealth and poverty could never truly separate genuine compassion and love, regardless of skin color or background. In quiet moments, he felt the inner tearing ease into a purposeful resolve to build a life where family came first. Later that day, Vinnie gathered everyone in the spacious living room for a simple Chicago-style family gathering. Fresh apple pie warmed on the table, deep dish pizza slices were shared, and baseball played softly on the television in the background. Emma and Sophie laughed together, their innocent joy filling the space. Sophie had fully embraced Vinnie as a safe presence after witnessing his sacrifices, her earlier distrust replaced by quiet affection. Lily watched with soft eyes, her voice timid and polite when she spoke to Vinnie. "Thank you for this, sir. It feels like a real home." Inside, she experienced waves of overwhelming attachment and trust, passionate and intense. The mindset of someone once desperately poor, now protected and cherished, created moments of deep emotional stillness mixed with occasional disorientation and grateful tears. As the afternoon unfolded into evening, Vinnie made his intentions clear in a heartfelt declaration. He stepped back fully from the more dangerous aspects of his past world, focusing instead on his legitimate empire and the family that had healed him. In a tender moment, he pulled Emma close and said with moving sincerity, "You are my daughter and I choose to raise you and protect you as my own. Sophie, you are part of this family too. No more shadows, only light from now on." The father-child bond reached its emotional peak as Emma hugged him tightly, whispering, "I knew you were a good daddy." The scene evoked profound sympathy and quiet tears, highlighting how compassion could bridge any divide. Weeks later, the household settled into a warmer rhythm. Lily continued her gentle role in the home, her once frail body now healthier, though memories of cold, wind-filled nights occasionally brought quiet reflection. She felt an intense, burning love and attachment toward the man who had rescued them, not through romance, but through pure, protective compassion that transcended wealth and poverty. Vinnie's remorse had transformed into grateful purpose. He still navigated occasional tense street confrontations with lingering rivals, bold but controlled encounters in quiet lots, where voices rose in accusation before calm authority diffused them. Yet he always returned home with greater determination to keep his family safe. In one quiet evening of condensed emotional stillness as the group sat together under warm lights, life lessons emerged naturally from their journey. The story showed how knowledge of one's past mistakes can lead to growth, and how lesson learned through hardship builds true strength. It taught the education that compassion heals deeper than power, and the knowledge that love sees beyond skin color or social standing. Every challenge offered a lesson in resilience, while the children's innocence provided the education that kindness can redeem even the hardest hearts. Through it all, the knowledge that wealth cannot buy peace, but human connection can become clear, along with the lesson that family is chosen through care, not blood alone. The education of forgiveness, and the knowledge that true protection comes from the heart brought everyone closer, reinforcing the lesson that no barrier of poverty or power can separate genuine compassion. 10 years later, the mansion echoed with laughter and everyday warmth. Emma had grown into a compassionate young woman. Sophie remained like a sister, and Lily had found steady purpose helping others in the community. Vinnie, no longer defined by his old shadows, devoted himself fully to raising the girls with love and guidance. The family often gathered for simple meals, sharing stories that reminded them how far they had come from cold nights and isolation. The journey proved that love and compassion could bridge any gap, showing that wealth and poverty hold no power when hearts connect through kindness. As this story draws to a close, we wish everyone watching this video good health, a joyful life, and daily peace. If this tale moved you, please subscribe to the channel, like, and share to enjoy many engaging videos every day. How did this story make you feel? How does it connect to real life and the lessons we all carry? Please share your comments below so the creator can listen to the emotions from deep within the viewers' hearts. Goodbye for now, and we promise to see you again in the next video. Disclaimer: all stories on this channel are fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.